Hi, Jody here from Healing Journey, www.healingjourneyservices.com. I go live every Tuesday. So if you'd like to join me live, feel free to check out my Facebook and check me out on Tuesdays. Then you can ask questions while I'm doing these lives. Okay, so today we're going to do a deeper dive into SIBO. So if you missed the last Facebook Live I did, go back and check that out because I talk a lot more about what SIBO is and some of the causes it can cause, some of the symptoms it can cause in terms of being one of the primary contributors to digestive symptoms. So I go a little bit deeper into this in my soon-to-be launched online program called Gut Instinct, which also has a membership component to it specifically for women, and it's an awesome way to do it yourself and sort out gut issues. And I also offer lab testing, including the test I'm about to talk about today. So if you have any more questions or you want to get on the wait list, please message me because it's going to be a wicked program and a way for you to get rid of those terrible chronic digestive symptoms. Okay, so let's dive right into it. So SIBO stands for small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. And as I talked about last week, basically it's when the bacteria somehow, for lots of different reasons, makes its way up to your small intestine, which it shouldn't be in, and it causes a lot of symptoms. So I want to talk today about different ways that you can tell that you have SIBO. So one of the ways, so let's just go over all of the symptoms of SIBO first of all, which is pretty generic to most GI symptoms. So it's abdominal pain and cramping. It's abdominal bloating. So, you know, that pregnant belly look that a lot of people get. I see a lot of, groups on Facebook where someone posts a picture and they're like, hey, I'm not pregnant. Yeah, SIBO. Because it's producing that gas, which leads me to the next symptom of belching and, farting and that kind of thing, all associated with SIBO because of that excess gas production. SIBO can also be linked with constipation. It can be linked with diarrhea. It can be linked with alternating diarrhea and constipation. If you have that nauseous feeling, that can be linked with SIBO. Skin issues, a huge SIBO connection there. Food sensitivities. If you have malnutrition, if you do blood work and you have B12 or anemia show up, and histamine intolerance. So if you're intolerant to any of the histamine-related foods, you may have SIBO. And so this brings me into kind of the key ways to tell. So the first test is if you're eating fermented food. So everyone touts fermented foods as this great gut healing food, which it is. But if you have SIBO, it's going to feed that bacteria and it's going to make that issue worse. So if you're eating sauerkraut, if you're eating kimchi, if you're eating, if you're drinking, what's that drink called? I'm drawing kombucha. Any of these fermented foods, even yogurts are fermented, right? If you're feeling worse, if your symptoms get worse in any regard, then it's a really good sign that you may have SIBO and it's something to dive in further. If you see undigested food in your stool, that's a good indication that there's this bacteria living in your small intestine, and that's simply because, you're not able to produce the right digestive enzymes to digest the food because of the dysbiosis that's going on in your small intestine. And so that's a really good indication that something is problematic further upstream and points the finger at SIBO. If you eat probiotics, so probiotics are touted as this really great health benefit, and the problem is probiotics contain things like lactobacillus, and lactobacillus is one of the primary contributors to hydrogen-based SIBO, and that hydrogen-based SIBO causes diarrhea. So for a lot of people, they think they're doing themselves a health benefit by eating these, probiotics, and they're actually making things worse because the probiotic is stopping in the small intestine and it's contributing to this already predominant bacterial overgrowth there, and it's not making its way into the large intestine where it belongs. So a hack that I have around this is I actually use a product called Megaspore. And Megaspore is my favorite probiotic product, and that's because it shocks the probiotic into spore form, and that spore form will protect its movement through the small intestine, and it will arrive in the large intestine. So this is the only probiotic that I recommend actually to all of my clients, and that is simply because if you do have SIBO, it's safe for all of my SIBO clients. Okay, the next thing that the way you can tell if you have SIBO is to do a low FODMAPs diet. So some people in the SIBO world may already be familiar with this diet, but essentially a low FODMAPs diet is going to be low in foods that are going to feed the SIBO bacteria. And so you're going to limit those foods. And if you limit those foods and you feel better, then chances are that you may have SIBO because the foods you're eating are feeding SIBO. So let's talk a little bit about what FODMAPs stands for. I'm probably going to massacre this a little bit. So FODMAPs, the F stands for fermentable. That means that it's broken down by bacteria in your gut, aka in this case your small intestine. Oligosaccharides, which include fructans, and fructans are found in grains, in certain vegetables, and some fruits. Galacto-oligosaccharides are found in legumes, beans, and lentils. So, if you're having, as this is especially common for those vegans and vegetarians, you have a lot of those chickpeas and you get that pregnant belly look. You are feeding SIBO. Disaccharides, so this can include lactose, so this is your milk and dairy products. So oftentimes with this you get diarrhea or you get a lot of gas and bloating. That's because you could be feeding SIBO. Monosaccharides, so this is found in certain fruits, honey, some vegetables, and agave syrup. So if you're getting that kind of gut rot feeling, that stomach ache, or those bloating feelings, even after you're eating healthy forms of sugar like honey, then you might want to think about SIBO. And the last one is polyols, like sugar alcohols. Again, this is found in fruits and some vegetables and sugar-free sweeteners. So all of these things are going to be issues because they're not absorbed completely by the small intestine. And if you have SIBO, and so the access is going to travel down into the large intestine, and then it's going to produce gas and cause a lot of problems. So if you can eat a low FODMAPs diet and you feel better, that's a good indication that SIBO is an issue. So the big ones tend to be, like broccoli is a big one, but garlic and onions are the really, really big ones, and certain fruits are big ones as well. So you can just look at a FODMAPs diet, and if you Google that online, you're going to come up with like a whole host of foods that are, FODMAPs. And so really try and limit that, I'd say, for a week or two, and you're going to know right away if you're feeling better. And that's a good indication that SIBO is a problem for you. And then the most obvious way to tell, and this is what I also recommend when you're really serious about getting to the bottom of things, is to do a SIBO breath test. And so this is a pretty accurate way of testing for SIBO. It tests for the hydrogen-based SIBO and it tests for the methane-based SIBO. It does not test for hydrogen sulfide, but sometimes you can use clues on that test to tell if you have hydrogen sulfide-based SIBO. And so basically it's really, really important before you begin treatment to 100% know and do a breath test. And the reason being is because even though you're like, yeah, it's obvious that I have SIBO because I have these symptoms, it's really important to make sure. So I am a prime example of this. I did a breath test for SIBO and I thought for sure I had it, and it didn't come back positive at all. I actually had other issues going on that were creating very SIBO-like symptoms. The other reason why you're going to want to test for SIBO is you need to know what type of gases you have. Is it predominantly hydrogen-based SIBO? Is it predominantly methane-based SIBO? If you don't know this, then this is going to affect the treatment. The treatment for methane-based SIBO is different than the treatment for hydrogen-based SIBO. You need to tailor. I'm not a big fan of like one thing captures all, so it's really important to know. The other reason why it's important to test is that you can track your progress. For a lot of people, it may take multiple rounds of dealing with, protocols to really address the SIBO. So sometimes the first round will bring it down a notch, and then you need to do another round. Sometimes the first round's not effective at all, and that simply means that that protocol isn't working for you. And that's why having that baseline test is going to be really, really important. So these are some of the reasons that, some of the ways to tell. So to do a little bit of a deeper dive into SIBO breath testing. So essentially what it is you're going to get a breath test kit, okay? And that kit is going to contain a number of vials, and you're going to blow into these vials. So you're going to drink a solution that's going to feed any SIBO type bacteria. And the idea is that you're going to have that fermented gas. Okay, and if you do have SIBO, because that bacteria is going to be fermenting whatever food you fed it, producing that gas, and then we're going to measure that gas production, okay, in the tubes, and then the lab is going to basically be able to tell me over a period of 120 minutes what your gas production levels are. And if you're going above range, then it's very, very likely that you have SIBO, and we need to look at treatment. So this SIBO test is actually something that I do offer in my practice. So if this is something that's of interest to you, go on over and check out my website and click free consults, because I offer free consults to anyone who's interested in learning more. So don't feel like you have to commit, but you can definitely have a chat with me about whether this test is right for you if you really want to get to the bottom of your SIBO. So in my next Facebook Live, I'm going to be talking a little bit more about how to treat SIBO. Okay, so it's a 3-part series. So in the next series, I'm going to look at a deeper dive into that treatment. If you have any questions, would love to answer them for you. Just post them below.